Welcome to Year of Connection, a year-long journey toward becoming whole self-connected. I'm your host, Pauline Shu. Do you ever hear secondhand or thirdhand even about an event or get-together that you weren't invited to, and then you feel upset that you weren't included? Do you ever have moments where you find yourself reacting wrongly to situations because of envy? Do you ever let anxiety or insecurity allow you to behave in ways that are intrusive or aggressive or passive-aggressive? Fear of missing out, envy, and jealousy are all things most of us experience when it comes to connections we feel protective of, connections we desire to have, and even sometimes connections we don't need or don't really care about at all. It's a natural feeling from time to time, but if it's not handled properly, the green-eyed monster can really ruin a great connection or prevent us from making new positive ones. In this episode, we'll talk about how to handle envy and what to do when we feel left out. There's a woman I've chatted with a few times at various activities that our kids attend. One of her sons and one of mine are the same age, so this tends to be at school events and sports games. I really enjoy talking to her every time we cross paths, and we've even said several times that we should find an evening to go out and hang out together. But mom dating, as my husband likes to call it, is often fraught with the same dynamics that the initial stages of any other relationship is subject to. When a connection is less stable, especially in its early stages, it's prone to corresponding feelings and perceptions. And so that's why when I found out a few days ago that this mom I want to be friends with had been emailing back and forth with another mom who is already a friend of mine, my first reaction was envy. My second reaction, which came quite quickly on the heels of my first one, was shame. I was upset with myself for reacting so foolishly, so immaturely, and I felt silly for making the connection between those other two women about me. And then, only after moving through all those emotions did I come to the conclusion that feeling envious was actually okay. Now, I'm not proud of it. I'm not sharing my reaction because I think it's great and should be applauded. I'm telling all of you what I felt because I think it's important to recognize that we are not free of emotions like envy and jealousy simply because we care a lot about love, respect, kindness, and connection. It only means we care more about and try harder to focus on those positive emotions and actions than on the ones that turn us into less confident people. Again, it does not mean we have somehow transcended our humanness and rid ourselves of those feelings completely. The reason, then, that I eventually concluded that my feelings were okay was because I had them, but didn't allow them to grow or take control over my standards of behavior or to become more important to me than the expression of my core values. I know I talk about core values and standards frequently, and there's a reason for that. This was a real situation in which I was able to work through my less helpful emotions, like envy, by remembering that the ways in which those feelings affect my behavior go against my standards and my values. That's also not to say that envy and jealousy are not occasionally helpful to connection. I say occasionally because they can't be helpful if you feel those things frequently. That's a sign you might need to work on shifting your own views and self-evaluation before changing your connections with others. But honesty in those emotions, just like everything else we've discussed, is necessary in order for you to learn and grow from the experience of jealous feelings. That is the way in which the green-eyed monster can help you, by being something you recognize honestly as a human, natural feeling, but also one that you don't want to experience with regularity. In recognizing this, you can take precaution against allowing feelings of insecurity and want to negatively influence your behavior, and you can work to strengthen your sense of self through your recognition. Bringing a stronger version of you into a relationship can only help your connections. So how do you do that? How do you let go of jealous feelings before they can impact your behavior? I usually use one of two methods. It depends on the situation, and it might end up that one works for you better than the other every single time. But for me, I like having two options to choose from so I can apply the better fit for a situation. The first method I use, and often the one I try first, no matter what, is to stop thinking about myself and instead imagine what good things the people I am envious of are getting from their relationship with one another. For example, in the case of this woman with whom I want to be friends, and the other woman who already is a friend, it was easy to be happy for them for finding support in one another. I could see how both would contribute knowledge and laughter to the other, since they have a similar sense of humor but complementary fields of expertise. Once I focused on their happiness and the joy they were gaining from knowing one another, I no longer felt upset that they were interacting without me. I was simply glad that they were interacting. I also reminded myself that, in time, my friendship with this woman might come. It also might not. Maybe it's not going to happen right now for whatever reason, but it could in the future. Regardless, forcing it won't work. I think of forcing connections like the time I bought new sheets for my bed, but they were a little bit too tight because they were so new. The very same day I bought them, I jammed the fitted one so hard over the mattress, wanting it to fit, that it completely ripped open along the seam. That was a lesson I'll never forget. And friendships are a lot like that sheet. If you try too hard to make it fit, it might just completely fall apart instead. But let's say you try this method of thinking only about what the person you're envious of is getting out of this other connection, and it doesn't quite work. The second method in that case might be more helpful. This one requires quite a bit more introspection, and I recommend it in general, just for understanding more about yourself, but it's also good to apply to situations like these. And that method is this. Ask yourself, what is it that I'm missing in my life that makes me envious of what these other people have, either with one another or on their own? I asked myself that question about this situation that I just experienced, even though I didn't really, quote unquote, need to. I was already feeling pretty good once I'd realized that these two women were a great fit as friends. But it really is good to understand what drives jealous feelings, because that often is the heart of the matter. The woman I want to be friends with has a very calm, welcoming demeanor. I always end conversations with her feeling more peaceful than I did at the start of our chats. The idea that someone else was benefiting from this woman's calming interpersonal skills might sound like an absolutely ridiculous reason to be envious, and yet there it was. When it dawned on me what was going on and what I was upset over, I made it a point to focus more on ways that I can make my own peace. It's only been a couple weeks, but I know I'm working toward the calm focus I wish to have through meditation, honest conversations with other friends, and something as simple as getting enough sleep and eating well. When my rest and diet suffer, I don't feel as stable, and that in turn affects my need for external comfort. I am sure I'll still feel the fear of missing out at times in the future. I'm sure I'll feel envy and jealousy because I'm human. But what we do with those feelings can make such an enormous difference to our happiness, to our health, and to our connections. I hope that the story and methods I've shared in this episode will help make that difference for you. If you want to share thoughts or questions about the green-eyed monster or the fear of missing out in connections, I invite you to leave a comment on this show's post or to email me. I always love hearing from listeners. And for those who are interested in why I use both the words envy and jealousy in this episode, there is a difference in meaning, however small. I've posted more details in the show notes for this episode on my blog. I'll see you next week. In the meantime, I wish you safe travels.